March 1942. Pearl Harbor still smokes in memory, and the Pacific is a board covered in question marks. Japan's navy moves like a ghost, convoys vanish into radio silence, and then cities burn. Somewhere in that silence is a code, the pulse of Japan's war machine. Its name is JN25B, 45,000 5-digit groups, printed in black ink on rice paper, each group masking orders, coordinates, and the Empire's next strike. Every message travels by radio, encrypted by machines, scrambled by human hands, and protected by layers of mathematics. Inside a wooden building at Pearl Harbor, Station HYPO, Commander Joseph Rochefort sits in a wool robe over his uniform, the air stinking of coffee, sweat, and hot vacuum tubes. Around him, 30 men and women hammer at keys, filling yellow pads with columns of numbers. The sound is constant, the clack of typewriters, the whine of oscillators, the crackle of intercepted signals bouncing from Tokyo to Truk. Each intercepted message is caught midair by Hallicrafters SX-28 receivers, their copper coils tuned to shortwave bands between 4 and 8 MHz. The problem is brutal. Each message in JN25B uses a 5-digit code group taken from a 30,000 entry codebook, then encrypted again with an additive key from a second book. That means two unknowns multiplied, hundreds of millions of possible combinations. The mathematicians call it a forest of mirrors. But under fluorescent light, the cryptanalysts attack it with pencils and nerve. Every time they find two messages using the same additive, they can strip the key, a subtraction that reveals the raw code beneath. It's like hearing the whisper under a storm. Rochefort's floor is covered with message pads. His men work in shifts, 12 hours at a stretch. On the wall, chalk diagrams show frequency counts. Some code groups repeat 12340 47182 66521. Analysts pin them on maps and guess meanings. Maybe airbase, maybe convo, maybe Midway. Each time a guess is right, 1,000 others collapse. But that's the shape of the war now, not artillery, but probability. March 1942. Pearl Harbor still smokes in memory, and the Pacific is a board covered in question marks. Japan's navy moves like a ghost, convoys vanish into radio silence, and then cities burn. Somewhere in that silence is a code, the pulse of Japan's war machine. Its name is JN25B, 45,000 5-digit groups, printed in black ink on rice paper, each group masking orders, coordinates, and the Empire's next strike. Every message travels by radio, encrypted by machines, scrambled by human hands, and protected by layers of mathematics. Inside a wooden building at Pearl Harbor, Station HYPO, Commander Joseph Rochefort sits in a wool robe over his uniform, the air stinking of coffee, sweat, and hot vacuum tubes. Around him, 30 men and women hammer at keys, filling yellow pads with columns of numbers. The sound is constant, the clack of typewriters, the whine of oscillators, the crackle of intercepted signals bouncing from Tokyo to Truk. Each intercepted message is caught midair by Hallicrafters SX-28 receivers, their copper coils tuned to shortwave bands between 4 and 8 MHz. The problem is brutal. Each message in JN25B uses a 5-digit code group taken from a 30,000 entry codebook, then encrypted again with an additive key from a second book. That means two unknowns multiplied, hundreds of millions of possible combinations. The mathematicians call it a forest of mirrors. But under fluorescent light, the cryptanalysts attack it with pencils and nerve. Every time they find two messages using the same additive, they can strip the key, a subtraction that reveals the raw code beneath. It's like hearing the whisper under a storm. Rochefort's floor is covered with message pads. His men work in shifts, 12 hours at a stretch. On the wall, chalk diagrams show frequency counts. Some code groups repeat 12340 47182 66521. Analysts pin them on maps and guess meanings. Maybe airbase, maybe convo, maybe Midway. Each time a guess is right, 1,000. The Japanese call their naval network Maru NI code, thinking it impenetrable. They change additive books every few months, and even a partial break could mean nothing. But the U.S. Navy's cryptologic effort, OP-20G in Washington and HYPO in Hawaii, run parallel lines of attack. Where Washington relies on IBM punch-card sorters and probability tables, Rochefort relies on instinct. He memorizes the handwriting of Japanese operators, the rhythm of transmissions, the hours of Tokyo traffic. War has turned him into a man who can feel patterns like weather. In the static, he hears a shape. April 1942. The messages repeat one new term, AF. It appears in dispatches marked with movement orders and supply reports. AF requests more water. AF defenses must be reinforced. Washington thinks it's a meaningless placeholder. Rochefort thinks otherwise. He and his second-in-command, Lieutenant Edwin Layton, suspect AF is an island, and not just any island, but the next target of Japan's expanding hand. HYPO's analysts cross-check flight distance codes, fuel requirements, and convoy times from previous decrypts. The math points to one coordinate again and again, 1,300 miles northwest of Hawaii. Midway. The tiny atoll that once seemed like a dot on a map now glows like a bullseye. But proof is everything. Rochefort's superiors in Washington demand confirmation. A solid decrypt, not a hunch. So he plans a trap. On May 19th, HYPO asks Midway to send an unencrypted message reporting a broken water condenser. AF is short of fresh water. 2 days later, Tokyo broadcasts a coded report. AF reports water shortage. The proof is complete. The walls of HYPO erupt with shouts. They have caught the Japanese Navy in its own reflection. Now, every transmission carries weight. The cryptanalysts plot patterns of call signs, RI, T1, and reconstruct the structure of Kido Butai, the carrier strike force. They know its ships, Akagi, Kaga, Sōryū, Hiryū. The same four that burned Pearl Harbor. The code reveals their departure date, their bearing, even their order of battle. What began as static has become prophecy. Rochefort sends his message to Admiral Chester Nimitz. Attack on Midway expected. Carriers 4. Date June 4th. It's not a guess anymore. It's mathematics turned into blood. But even now, not everyone believes. Some in Washington say the decrypts are coincidence, noise dressed as pattern. Others fear acting on incomplete data. Yet the machines keep humming, and the numbers keep repeating. Somewhere in that hum, the Pacific's fate is already written. And in the silence between signals, where fear and logic meet, the war prepares to turn. June 3, 1942. The Pacific is calm again, the kind of stillness that hides an ambush. In the command bunker under Pearl Harbor, Admiral Chester Nimitz bends over a wall-sized chart of the Central Pacific. Red pins mark known Japanese call signs. Blue arcs mark American patrol ranges. Between them lies AF, Midway, the bait Rochefort's men had drawn with pencil and nerve. Above the map hangs a single sheet of paper. JN-25B, partial decrypt. Reliability 80%. Every wire hums. Navy radio men tune Hammerland SP-200 receivers to Japanese naval frequencies, 12,000 to 16,000 kHz. Their headphones leak a faint hiss of static, Morse code tapping in bursts. These signals, sent from ships more than 1,000 miles away, travel by skywave, bouncing off the ionosphere and falling back like ghosts. Operators in Station HYPO triangulate bearings using Adcock antenna arrays spread across Oahu, plotting the direction of each transmission. The bearings converge west-northwest, exactly where Rochefort predicted the carrier strike force would sail. In Washington, the skepticism breaks. The analysts of OP-20G finally admit, the Japanese are coming from Midway. But the value of intelligence lies not in knowledge, it lies in timing. Every decoded message must move faster than ships can sail. The relay chain runs through encrypted teletype circuits, Sagaba machines encrypting outgoing traffic at 500 letters per minute. Each message is converted to a continuous tape, fed through gears, and re-encoded with rotors that change with every keystroke. The electric chatter becomes a heartbeat. On June 4th, the trap is set. Task Force 16 under Rear Admiral Raymond Spruance and Task Force 17 under Frank Jack Fletcher lie northeast of Midway. 2 carriers, Enterprise and Hornet, plus the battered Yorktown. Their locations are known only to a handful of officers and to the sea itself. The Japanese believe the American carriers are still nursing wounds at Pearl. That's what the false traffic says, a deception built on the same principle as the codebreakers used, the manipulation of expectation. The first contact comes at dawn. Midway's radar, an SCR-270B set upgraded with dual synchronized oscillators for reduced clutter, spots a mass of inbound aircraft at 150 miles, bearing 320 degrees. The operator's report travels by voice line to the command post in under 90 seconds. Fighters scramble immediately. For the first time in the Pacific, a battle begins not with surprise, but with foreknowledge. Over the horizon, Vice Admiral Chuchi Nagumo's strike group, 4 carriers, Akagi, Kaga, Sōryū, Hiryū, launches the first wave. Japanese A-6M0's climb escort, D-3A, Vales, dive bombers load 250 kg semi-armor-piercing bombs, and B-5 and Kates fit their 45cm Type 91 torpedoes. Their formation moves at 185 knots, a formation so large it could be tracked by mathematics alone. At 4:30, Rochefort's last intercept arrives. The coded prefix, YBI, previously unknown, now decrypted as Reserve Force orders to stand by. It confirms Nagumo's position north of Midway. Rochefort circles it in red pencil, writes, "Confirmed," and passes the strip to a courier. Within minutes, Nimitz has it on his desk. Intelligence has become fire control. Midway's defenders rise to meet the first strike. B-17 flying fortresses lift from the island's runway, climbing to 20,000 feet. Their Norden bomb sites are useless against moving carriers, but they serve another purpose: reconnaissance. Each plane carries a SCR-517 radar transponder, allowing ground stations to track their position and relay data to Spruance's fleet. The web between sea and sky tightens. As the Japanese bomb Midway's runways, Nagumo faces a decision: launch a second strike against the island or arm for anti-ship attack. His decks fill with refueling planes, torpedoes, and half-loaded bombs, the most dangerous condition for any carrier. Then his scout planes radio the first contact. 10 enemy ships, bearing 10 degrees, distance 240 miles. It's the ghost of the American task force. Nagumo hesitates. 15 minutes of indecision that history will measure in miles and fire. In those 15 minutes, Spruance orders his dive bombers airborne. The SPD Dauntless squadrons, fueled to the edge of safety, fan out in a 70-mile sweep. Navigation depends on radio fixes and DR, dead reckoning. Every minute of delay means another degree of error. Yet the codebreakers' data, turned into bearings and estimates, gives Spruance the confidence to push toward where logic says the enemy must be. At 9:20, Ensign Jack Reed, flying at 19,000 feet, spots a faint smear on the horizon, ship's smoke, the sun glinting off water. He radios the coordinates. Enemy sighted. Those numbers, 320 degrees, 180 miles, are nearly identical to Rochefort's predicted point from a week earlier. The chain from intercepted digits to burning decks is complete. The dive bombers descend. 77 American planes, the same number that later becomes myth, find the Japanese carriers amid chaos. Their decks are stacked with bombs, torpedoes, and fuel lines. At 10:22, 3 hits in 5 minutes set Kaga, Akagi, and Sōryū ablaze. The heat is so intense that radar operators 200 miles away register brief interference spikes, the ionized air scattering their pulses. The code that began as mathematics now manifests as fire and signal noise. In the bunker at Pearl Harbor, Rochefort listens to after-action reports through static. No celebration, only exhaustion. He knows that behind every victory there are thousands of unanswered intercepts, thousands of numbers still unsolved. But he also knows this: for the first time in the war, America was not reacting, it was anticipating. The Battle of Midway has turned. Not by luck. Not by guesswork. by arithmetic, radio, and patience. And in the faint hiss of static, the Pacific goes quiet, just long enough for the next code to be born. Late 1942. The Pacific still burns, but now the real war hums under the noise, a war of voltage, frequency, and silence. After Midway, Japan hides its wounds behind encryption. Their code, JN25B, is replaced by JN25C, rebuilt with new additive books and randomization tables. The Empire believes its secrets are safe again. But at Pearl Harbor Station HYPO and the new Fleet Radio Unit Melbourne, FROMO, the machines never stop. Rows of cryptanalysts sit before racks of Model 19 teleprinters, spitting endless ribbons of punched paper. The smell of ink, metal, and sweat fills the air. Messages intercepted from Tokyo and Rabaul arrive as bursts of Morse code, bursts caught by high-gain rhombic antennas, fed through vacuum tube amplifiers, printed into columns of 5 digits. To a layman, it's chaos. To a trained ear, it's music. Each message carries a fingerprint, transmission speed, operator rhythm, even the mechanical click of a specific transmitter coil. The Americans catalog them all, a primitive kind of signal fingerprinting long before computers. Every Japanese station has a voice. HYPO's operators give them names. Tokyo Charlie, Rabaul Fox, Yamato Blue. In the dark, they hunt by sound. Cryptanalytic attack becomes industrial. Washington's OP-20G installs an entire floor of IBM punch card sorters and tabulators, 400 machines chattering day and night. Each punch represents one digit of the JN25 system, 10 columns across, 5 rows deep. Analysts feed thousands of partial decrypts into the sorters, searching for recurring additive pairs. The process is mechanical hypnosis, card after card, hour after hour, until a pattern appears. But the machines alone can't win. Patterns come alive only in human intuition. Rochefort's successors notice something odd. In dozens of messages, certain code groups cluster near phrases already known, such as convo, refuel, reinforce. Statistical probability says coincidence, but instinct says intent. They build crib tables, hypothesized plaintexts lined up under intercepted groups. The probability of a correct alignment is less than 1 in a billion, but war doesn't need certainty, only confidence. In January 1943, the Navy introduces bomb-style electromechanical analyzers, adapted from British designs. Rotating drums simulate Japanese additive sequences at 500 revolutions per minute. Each rotation tests a hypothesis. The whirring echoes through the halls, a constant metallic heartbeat. When a match hits, a small light flashes. Every flash is a fragment of Japan's mind revealed. Across the Pacific, radio operators in the field play their own deadly chess. Submarines of the Silent Service begin transmitting target reports using new one-time pad, OTP, systems, unbreakable, but painfully slow. The irony isn't lost on the men at HYPO. They fight to break a code while using one that can't be broken. Every side fears silence more than error. By mid-1943, decrypted traffic exposes Japan's supply arteries. Oil convoys from Borneo, troop transports to Guadalcanal, submarine patrol routes. Ultra-intercepts, labeled only Magic, in U.S. documents, begin to steer operations. Admiral Nimitz orders submarine ambushes using data from messages that never existed officially. Its intelligence so secret that even the captains executing it don't know its origin. The invisible war also breeds paranoia. In Tokyo, the Naval General Staff suspects leaks, arrests operators, rewrites manuals, even replaces transmitters. But the weakness isn't the machines, it's the patterns humans can't stop making. Operators still favor certain additives, repeat timing intervals, or sign messages with predictable rhythm. HYPO learns to read not just the code, but the habits behind it. Technically, the mathematics are monstrous. Each JN25C message combines a 5-digit code group with a random additive between 00000 and 99999. The only way to peel it open is by coincidence. When two messages use the same additive, their difference equals the difference of their code groups. This, Depth attack requires hundreds of aligned messages. The Americans have thousands. They feed them into punch card sorters until the numbers sing. At night, the cryptanalysts sleep under their desks. The paper reels curl like snakes. One operator writes in his log, "I hear the code in my dreams, 5 beats, pause, 5 beats." In the morning, the clatter starts again. The difference between brilliance and madness is measured in caffeine and voltage. Through 1943 and 1944, the decrypted fragments form maps of future battles. Bougainville, Rabaul, Leyte Gulf. Intercepts warn of Operation Aro, Japan's last attempt to reinforce New Guinea. Submarines sink the transports before they reach port. Each victory is silent, unseen, denied. Every success must die in secrecy, because revealing it would tell Japan they're being watched. The men at HYPO carry their triumphs like ghosts. By 1944, the War of Electrons evolves again. U.S. codebreakers integrate direction finding, DF, triangulation, combining signal strength and bearing from multiple islands to locate ships within 10 miles. Aircraft with ARR-2 radar warning receivers sweep the skies for enemy transmissions. The Pacific has become a mesh of invisible lines, every signal a potential target. In one intercepted message from June 1944, analysts decode an innocuous phrase. Unit C proceeding to Philippine waters. The unit is the Yamato, the largest battleship ever built. Within a week, American submarines are waiting. When Yamato finally sails toward Okinawa in 1945, U.S. carriers already know her route, her speed, and her hour of death. The machines of HYPO have become prophets. Yet their priests are shadows, unacknowledged, unthanked, unseen. When the war ends, their building will be dismantled, their files burned, their secrets swallowed by classification. But for now, the reels spin, the rotors hum, and the Pacific crackles with invisible fire. The war is no longer fought on maps. It's fought in circuits, frequencies, and faith. The codebreakers listen. And somewhere, in the static, another message begins to form. August 1945. The war is nearly over, but the radios still hiss. In the windowless rooms of Station HYPO, the paper reels keep feeding through teleprinters even as Japan prepares to surrender. The air smells of dust, ink, and hot metal. The operators don't cheer. They don't even look up. They listen. Because long before peace is signed, a new kind of war has already begun, one fought not by fleets, but by data. The last months of the Pacific Campaign turned cryptology into machinery. The U.S. Navy's Communications Supplementary Activities, Washington, CSAW, builds the first automated decryption devices, machines with magnetic drums spinning at thousands of RPM, each storing thousands of 5-digit code groups. They call them computers, a word that still means a person who computes. The devices can compare patterns faster than any human could, 70 correlations per second, an eternity of insight born in a heartbeat. In the same months, at Bletchley Park, British engineers demonstrate Colossus, a computer built to attack the German Lorenz cipher. American observers take notes in silence. Within a year, similar logic begins to seep into Pacific operations: punch tape analyzers, relay logic, vacuum tube amplifiers for probabilistic code breaking. The once manual world of cryptanalysis starts to evolve into something self-aware. Rochefort's protégés, men like Joseph Finnegan and Thomas Dyer, remain at HYPO even after VJ Day. They no longer chase convoys or fleet orders, they study patterns of peace. Every Japanese signal is parsed, indexed, archived. The entire enemy's radio network becomes a blueprint: who transmits where, how often, and with what power. Out of these patterns, the Navy learns to see nations as circuits. It's the birth of electronic intelligence, ELINT. On Saipan, Signal Intelligence Unit 21 deploys mobile receivers capable of scanning 30 to 40 MHz in real time, unheard of speed for 1945. They use superheterodyne architectures, double conversion for stability, quartz-controlled oscillators for precision. They can tell, by harmonic distortion alone, whether a signal came from a radar, a submarine, or a human voice. For the first time, the electromagnetic spectrum becomes a battle space. Meanwhile, Japan's engineers, still working through the final weeks of the war, tried to build their own countermeasure, the Tachi-13 radar jammer and Type 3 Mark I radar detector. They're clever, elegant, uselessly late. By the time they deploy, Allied radar already operates on shorter wavelengths, centimetric bands impossible for Japan's analog detectors to track. Technology has outrun human adaptation. When the Emperor's surrender message is intercepted on August 14th, it's not heard by politicians or soldiers first, it's heard by signalmen. The voice of the Emperor, carried at 19 kHz over shortwave, passes through Allied receivers minutes before Tokyo broadcasts it to its own people. The final words of Japan's war are caught by the same machines that predicted its defeats. But the victory brings no relief. In Washington, OP-20G evolves into a new entity, the Armed Forces Security Agency, AFSA, precursor to the NSA. The men who once broke JN-25 now begin studying Soviet radio traffic. New cryptosystems, Sixily voice encryption, KW-26 online ciphers, emerge. The paper reels are replaced by magnetic tape, vacuum tubes multiply by the thousands. Every hum, every flicker, every click of a relay is the sound of a civilization mechanizing thought. The codebreakers begin to vanish into their own creation. Their work becomes classified beyond imagination, compartments within compartments. Some of the HYPO veterans never speak of their roles again. Others join civilian labs, MIT, RCA, Bell, where they refine logic circuits and memory storage based on wartime devices. They trade ciphers for algorithms, fleets for networks. Within 5 years, the architecture of wartime cryptology becomes the skeleton of the digital age. And yet the ghosts remain. Rochefort dies in 1976, unrecognized for decades, his commendation lost in bureaucracy. When it's finally restored, the citation reads, "For turning information into victory." But what it truly means is this: he and his generation turned secrecy into science. The machines that once hunted fleets now hunt patterns in everything: weather, economics, politics, human behavior. The very concept of a code has changed. It no longer guards ships, it defines civilization. The war that began with intercepted Morse ended with the first whispers of computation. The line between signal and thought disappeared. And the men who first broke Japan's secrets never realized that in decoding the enemy, they had begun to decode themselves. The screens are dark now. The rooms are empty. But if you listen long enough, the static is still there, faint, endless, infinite. The sound of the machine thinking. If this episode sent chills down your spine, hit the like button. Tell us in the comments what struck you the most, and subscribe so you don't miss the next story. Because this is only the beginning of a long journey into the darkest pages of history.